Hello today, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I'm here today to address a flat earth misconception. Those of us who understand the atmosphere and space and the heliocentric solar system and so forth and so on, we know that our atmospheric pressure at sea level is about 14.7 psi, and that's pounds per square inch for those who don't know what psi means. And you can see right behind me here I have an air compressor, and my air compressor pumps up to 175 psi. Space is zero pressure. It's not a vacuum, okay? A vacuum cleaner, you plug it in, you turn it on, and it sucks. The way it does that is that it has a fan inside that blows the air out of the chamber, and the hose is connected to the chamber. So when that motor comes on and turns that fan, it creates a negative pressure in the chamber, which translates through the hose. Now, that is a negative pressure relative to atmospheric pressure. Space is not a vacuum. Space is zero pressure. So if you were to compare the pressure inside the chamber of a vacuum cleaner to the pressure of outer space, you would still probably have 7 or 8 psi. Technically, I think it's, I don't remember if it's 30 inches or negative 30 inches of mercury that is a perfect vacuum. That is still not a vacuum. Technically, it is zero pressure. Our pressurized atmosphere does not sit next to a vacuum. There's nothing sucking on our atmosphere to pull it away from the planet. In fact, there's almost no pressurized anything sitting next to the zero pressure of space. And to use a comparative analogy, and it's actually about the most perfect comparison that you can make in this, is depth pressure in the ocean. All right, so literally right at the surface there's zero water pressure. That's zero water pressure compared to the atmosphere. So technically, compared to the zero pressure in outer space, there's 14.7 psi of water pressure at the surface of the ocean. And I don't know what the increase in pressure per foot or per 100 feet is, whatever the increments are that's typically gauged in or measured in. But suffice it to say, when you get down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, I think that's proper pronunciation, Marianas, something like that, which, to my current knowledge, is the deepest place on Earth. There are literally thousands upon thousands of pounds per square inch of pressure pushing down there. The reason for that is because of all of the millions of gallons of water above. It's kind of like, another apt analogy is if you're toting a stack of books, you start out with one, somebody sets another one up there and it gets a little heavier. You set another one, it gets a little heavier. On and on and on and on until it gets so heavy that you can't carry it. Now, do the same thing. Take that stack of books and sit, lay your pillow down, sit your book on top of it. Sinks a little bit. Sit another book on it, sinks a little more. And if you keep doing that, eventually you're going to have enough weight on top of that pillow that it's going to mash it almost flat. That's how our atmosphere works. imagine if the ocean surface where it meets our atmosphere is zero pressure compared to our atmosphere, then the higher you go in the atmosphere, there's less atmosphere on top of it, so it thins out even more until eventually you get far enough out that it's zero pressure. And I apologize, it's probably not a very good explanation of it, but speaking of which, let me ask you this. And I've already told you that our atmosphere is 14.7 psi at sea level. And I'm not quite at sea level right here. I'm close. It's been a while since I've looked at a topographical map. So right here, just for conversative purposes, I'm going to say that the atmospheric pressure here is 14.7 psi. So that's established because we can't breathe in zero pressure. If it was zero pressure right here, I'd be dead, right? So when I take my air hose and I pull the trigger on it, is our atmosphere a vacuum that's sucking the air out of the nozzle? Comparatively now, if there were people or bugs or something living inside of the air compressor and they could only live in 175 psi or somewhere around there, then to their perception everywhere out here would be a vacuum. But it's not. It's just simply a pressure differential. So your concept that the Earth's atmosphere is sitting next to a vacuum would be the same thing as saying that Earth's atmosphere is a vacuum compared to the air compressor. So just take and turn that around. Sorry, I don't want to leave that thing hooked up when it gets as cold as it is, because being made out of plastic, and plastic tends to get super brittle when it's cold. I can't think of a simpler way to explain it. I write about it occasionally, and when I write about it, I typically use a drink bottle. This drink bottle being pressurized inside, so when I crack it open, well, very little pressure. I don't know if y'all heard that or not. Is it a vacuum out here that's sucking the pressure out of it? When you shake this thing up and the carbon dioxide separates from the carbonated water and other dissolved whatnots in here, is it a vacuum that's causing the dissolved CO2 to separate from the drink? Or is it more mass in a confined area than should technically be there, so it separates under its own pressure? That's what it is. So space is not a vacuum. Space is just simply zero pressure. And as far as space expanding and acting like a fabric, so to speak, which that's not accurate, but it's the most apt way that we can describe it with the limited dimensionality of the tools that we have. I'm sorry, that's really complicated to explain. But space itself is a physical, tangible thing. So you folks, when you talk about the firmament, guess what? Space is the firmament. But I don't want to get into that discussion or conversation or whatever. I just mainly wanted to talk about air pressure and the vacuum of space. It's not a vacuum, I've said that. It's zero pressure, but we call it a vacuum because it's an apparent vacuum, if that makes sense. We typically view our atmosphere as being zero pressure. That's not true. And the reason that we view it as being zero pressure is simply because it's the baseline that we base everything else off of. Like I said earlier, the air compressor I have here pumps up to 175 psi. That's 175 psi against 14.7 psi. So if I was to pump this thing up right now, which it is pumped up, and load it onto a helicopter or an airplane or something other like that, and take it up to 30 or 40 or 50,000 feet, the pressure gauge would go above 175 psi, because the gauge measures the internal pressure of the tank against atmospheric pressure. So anyway, some of you folks that are truly curious or truly want to understand, you'll look into this and understand it more. And then there are those of you who don't want to learn, you're happy with your misunderstanding. Don't bother commenting, because all you're going to do is the same hateful stuff that you always do. You don't have any science to back up anything that you say. You show your true colors is what you do. Speaking of which, I don't think I've said anything about the Netflix release, Beyond the Curve or Behind the Curve or whatever the name of it is. And I don't even remember the fella's name. Not Mark Sargent, but the older fella with the ring laser gyroscope. After studying a little bit and coming to understand how a ring laser gyroscope works, guess what? It's impossible. It is literally an impossibility of physics, science, motion, and anything else that you can think of. It's even an impossibility of light for the ring laser gyroscope to pick up any motion that's not acting directly upon the mechanism itself. So you got a table, you're sitting on the floor, motionless, concrete floor, whatever, that's not going to move. You set your ring laser gyroscope on it, you flip it on, you let it sit there for 2 or 3 hours and discover that it's showing a 15 degree per hour movement. It is literally impossible for it to be picking up any motion other than its own. And it's not moving according to what you flat earthers say, because it's sitting on a table that's sitting on an immovable earth. But it's still showing motion. So in order for that gyroscope to be showing motion, and I'll put a link in the video in the description under this one that explains how the ring laser gyroscope works, go watch that video. And you should come to the same understanding if you understand the mechanics of how it works. The only way that it could be showing a 15 degree per hour motion is if it's moving 15 degrees per hour. And the only way that it could be doing that by sitting on a table that doesn't appear to be moving, which is sitting on a floor that doesn't appear to be moving, which is sitting on the ground, which doesn't appear to be moving, is if all of those things are moving together. Only way that it's possible. Period. And I'm not going to stand here and try to describe how it works. Like I said, I'll put a link in the video, in the description under this video. Click on it, watch it, enjoy, and grow. I hope to see each one of you in the kingdom of heaven. Yahweh bless.